Seaweed Primary School in Sheffield. It's a school in the heart of Portsmouth in Greve, which is an area of quite high level of deprivation for the children. It's a large school of 2-form entry, and it's a school with lots of challenges linked to its cohort, but also huge strengths from that, because we're in a very diverse community. So we're about 95% ethnic minority children, about 85% who are English as an additional language. We're a C of E school with about 90% of children who are Muslim, and the diversity it brings is fantastic. But it does bring lots of challenges as well. And we do have lots of quite complex SEN needs. We have about 6 or 7 children with quite severe ASD, and they've just gone into year 1, so we've had to change what we do and create a little resource for them. So you can imagine the use of additional adults in my school is quite high on the agenda. But I'm also aware that context may be very different to your schools. I've passed, driving here from Sheffield, lots of quite small schools, as I've driven past. Mine's quite large. I've probably got lots of pupil premium funded. You may not have, some of you will. So I'm very aware of that. I'm quite happy to sort of unpick that with any of you afterwards as well. But I've been really lucky with this document. On the TES training package, when Mike talks, he talks about sometimes something comes along that stands out when it lands on your desk, and this one did for me. But I was also really lucky. I got to work with Outwood Grange as part of the advocacy team that delivered the programme, so I could really get into it. And that's what's really key for me, understanding this report and embracing it, and the process of implementing it is actually what took us to the point of knowing what it was we wanted for TA practice in our school. Because initially, I wanted someone to come and say to me, this is the best way to use your TAs, because I've got lots of them, and I need to use them really well, because actually the accountability, I spend approximately £600,000 on support staff. I've got to prove there's value for money for that, so I've got to get it right. And also my children's needs means they won't make progress unless we get it right. So this was high stakes for us, and when this report came along, for me it was really transformational. It cut across lots of agendas, and it was a tool to bring things together. So I'm really passionate about it. I think it's fantastic, but the secret for me was in its implementation. So my top tips are not here. I'm not here to say, oh, do it like this or like that and you'll be successful. I wouldn't dream of that, because you know your schools really, really well. And that's what I really like about this report, because it sets out recommendations, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. Do it like this. And that's a real bonus for me. And this report, the top tip linked to the report itself, is know the research and trust the research. Whatever leadership position you're in within school, if you're the key driver of this, my top tip is know it really well. I'd read some of the DIS report, I've read the books that Rob has talked about, and I'm sure you'll get the links to that. But this report, for me, brought it all together, summarised it in a way that made sense. And in a way that made sense to me, but very quickly to the staff as well. So it really brought it alive. But the biggest plus was, we didn't need to start from the beginning. The trust the research for me was really important. I trusted that those recommendations were right, and actually they are right. How we do it and how we make it work for our school, that's fine. But actually we didn't need to start from scratch and say, right, what's a good way to work with teaching assistants? What's the principles? It was there and we moved on from that. So top tip, know the research and trust the research. Be as expert as you can in it with the time that you've got to get to know it. The second top tip, that I'm so glad I was part of the delivery of the programme, because I'm not sure I'd have realised this had I been where you are now. My top tip is never lose sight of this isn't actually mostly about TAs, this is about change. And the process of change, which actually then impacts on lots and lots of things I found. So don't lose sight of that in implementing the change and have some kind of model for that. This model was transformational for me. I've been ahead for quite a while. I've been ahead in, this is the 3rd school, and this has really helped me. We use this all the time now. It's called the Bridge Change Leadership Model. And really, to be fair, whatever model of change management you're comfortable with, that's great, but have one. That's my top tip. Because this model we applied to all of our work. And very soon I'll talk to you about the team that we used for this. But this model took us through a process. I love these terms, and I used them with the staff. Confront reality, and then awaken possibility. Confront reality sounds a little bit like you're just assuming everything's bad. It's not bad at all. But have a good, accurate picture of where you're at, and be realistic about that. If it's okay, and we were okay in our use of TAs, but actually in my school, being okay in your use of TAs is not going to get you to where you need to be. So we weren't dire, we were kind of okay, but we knew we had to do it better. So we all took that on board together, and then that takes you through that process of into what the Bridge Change Leadership Model calls living vision, and it's very explicit on the living vision is about actually acknowledge where you are, know where you want to be, because then the strategy will take you from one to the other. And that model's absolutely fantastic. When I use that for all really school improvement work now, because it applies to everything. But for this, it was even more important, because so many schools, I believe we're all guilty of this, we've built on, haven't we, layers of teaching assistant support. Because as these bits of money kept coming in, a response was often, well, we'll get some more support staff. And actually, you then build on maybe structures that worked when you had a few, but actually now you've got more, that structure isn't quite right anymore. So that's embedded. I've known schools where that embedded practice has been there for years and years. And actually, when that's about people's jobs and people's livelihoods, and isn't it hard to change? And also, when you're really busy, what do? You go back to what you know. That's what I found. And so for me, this was about have a model for change. And really, once you've got that vision, just stick with it and be at the heart of that change. Because actually, if you've got change that's about people's jobs and roles, if the head's not interested, or the most senior person who can dedicate the time to that and can be strategic, then why change? It's got to be really driven. That would be my top tip. That be at the heart of that change, but find a model to do it. Within that Bridge Change Leadership Model, we came up with, initially, SLT. Looked at what are our guiding principles, and I'm not reading them all, but the top one for me is massive. It's why probably I'm a head teacher. But teaching assistants help break down barriers to learning and ensure equity for all children, and that's about social justice, isn't it? Children who maybe haven't had the best deal, who maybe have got barriers to learning. Let's use our TAs really well, take those children and do a really good job with them. And that was one of our guiding principles, that it isn't just about us as leaders or teachers, but teaching assistants are probably the most valuable resource we've got in our school. And we really took those and we put those at the heart of what we did. So the work felt credible, it felt like it had integrity, and it felt like it mattered. And I think this is an area where, in the busyness of everything, you could just put it down. But actually, this really mattered, and we needed to make sure everybody else knew it really mattered, so that we could get some change. Top tip number 3 is make sure everyone's with you and behind you. Because I think lots of us as leaders, aren't we, we're really busy and we're rushing on ahead, and then we realise actually nobody's there with us. And let's go back to square one. Well, that was the most important thing. Again, people had heard on the news that, they're saying teaching assistants can make a negative impact, and then they start to worry about their jobs and all of that. So we had to win hearts and minds, and we did that in different ways. We launched this as a campaign, and I think that language was really, really key to us. This was about saying, you're really important, and actually there's a national campaign to really help us use our people really, really well. So we did a launch within school, which was really important, and we used this with our TAs, stars in our classrooms. I think it's a unison video. It's really short, but it just says how special they are, and don't we all love that when somebody says you're really special? And our TAs love that. If you don't do anything else to launch this, maybe just have a look at that video with your TAs, and they suddenly realise, oh yes, we are valued, we are important. But probably the most important thing we did in school was we developed a team, and we developed lots of the information in the books that you get talk about a change team. For our school, it was really about actually, we'd come through lots of change. This was about a development team, so we just changed the language and we called it a development team. And that team was, I was on it. We had the deputy on the team, we had 2 teachers, and we had 4 teaching assistants on the team. So it really was a big team, and I had to bring them out of class to do it. We did it during the school day and the times, but it gave ownership to it because people realised actually their voice was really important. So a real top tip from me is make sure everyone's following you, don't leave them behind, and win their hearts and minds, keeping that conversation going about this project was really, really important. That meant that list there, and we had a vision and we had aims. By using the team, what we then got to is that's what the team believed. And that was much better language for our staff in our school. The team had a belief in true partnership, and the team believed that all staff make the contribution. The better prepared TAs are, the more effective they can be. This was about language of the classroom and the staff, and the team came up with that together. That's really when we began to drive things forward, because people realised it wasn't just another initiative. If Mo's going to let people come out of class and actually meet together during the school day, this must be important. And those principles, I believe, then took the school forward. And they're really simple. We didn't have loads of them. But really, I suppose, drilling down to what it is your staff want was really important for us. So I'm going to stop for just a minute, because I do talk rather a lot. And just on your tables for 2 minutes is perhaps just think for yourself and then share with a colleague, what are your principles and beliefs as the leader in your school that you won't compromise on, linked to teaching assistants and the use of support staff? The ones you just hold so dear, that's the bottom line. Did you find that easy? Have you got a real nugget that you can share with people? Something that you just won't compromise on? Let's just have one of them, if that's okay.
Teachers need to be prepared to use their TAs to the best of their abilities.
Fantastic, and I think that's a great one because it moves away from this isn't actually about teaching assistants, is it? It's actually so much about what the teacher does. And that's a good message getting out there, isn't it? So, thank you. That's really important, but I was just talking with Rob there. The vision and the principles actually now totally sit with the staff and the team. But at the beginning, at the launch, I stood up and I said, this is what I believe. This is my vision for how I want us to work. It'll look different once we unpick it, but they had to know that I knew what I wanted as a head, because it had to be compelling enough for people to want to then get involved. But actually the real vision, the living vision, is now sat with the staff. But I think the more we can articulate as leaders on this area, because I think it's always been just one of those things that happens in school, isn't it? Teaching assistants.
I think it's new that in our school that we and maybe we need to revisit it, is we've always said that it doesn't matter, not just the TAs I know specific, but actually in our building, any grown-up who is helping children, whether they be the cleaners, the NDSA, everybody in our school has equal value in terms of their responsibility is to impact on improving that child's learning. And it's something that I think this project will allow us to revisit it to start with the teaching assistance support, and actually sort of reiterating that you are valuable, as you say, you are valuable, and without you, we would find it very difficult for us. So we always say, if a teacher falls down, we get a supply teacher, or I go in. But if the boiler goes down and we've got no site manager, the school closes. So sometimes you've just got to realise who's the most important person to keep the building open. And there are often times when if a member of staff goes down and we're a long way, we're all right on the coast. If TAs don't go, it's all right, I'll do the register. And being there and sort of balancing up that understanding that they are vital to the building.
And that's why I like the word campaign.
Yeah.
Because it is actually showing really important in school. Thank you. Top tip number 4 is about auditing. Now, I know you've been tasked up and you've come back today having done some auditing. We had a good few goes at this before we actually really got to the heart of what it was. Top tip number 4 is think about what you know and check it out, because you probably don't, because that's what I found. I thought I knew, and sometimes I was right, but actually I might have been right in that classroom and that classroom, but I wasn't right in that classroom and that classroom. So check it out, don't assume, and then decide what you don't know and what you want to know more. And I think there's a danger you rush through some of the auditing, and we started rushing and then we went back to it, and we did that auditing in different ways. We did somewhere we got together as a staff team and we asked some particular questions of how do you think teaching assistants should be used? How do you use additional adults? How do you work together? And we had a discussion in groups and we collected evidence from there, because that was staff, that was their gut reaction, and we could get that. Then we did the survey, the online survey, and lots of schools have done that anonymously, and actually you can't know who it is who's done it, but we drilled it down and we set up one for each team. So we set one up for foundation stage, one for years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because actually the answers from foundation stage team, and my foundation stage is an outstanding foundation stage team, we're not outstanding across the rest of school. The 5, 6 responses were quite different to the foundation stage in terms of having time to talk between teachers, teaching assistants, and what we could see was a real model of good practice there. Had we not separated out those surveys, we wouldn't have got that. And so that was really good for us, but you might wanted to have used it in that totally blanket way, just hear everybody's voice. We tweaked that. We then went into classrooms, and some of the development team, well, all of the development team went into classrooms, teachers and TAs and leaders, and we looked at what was happening. And then we got together and said, well, what's it telling us? And this was before the nice fancy tools were ready in the round. And we looked at them, we took the recommendations and the statements, and we checked out lots of where the green is the outstanding part. That was foundation stage team, and we realised we could really learn from them. So actually, by drilling down further, we could look at where the strengths were that we were going to be able to use across school to spread the practice. So top tip number 4 is don't assume you know, and I love this quote: your assumptions are your windows on the world, scrub them off every once in a while or the light won't come in. I assumed far too much about what we were doing in the classrooms. And I don't mean that critically of my staff, we're all busy, but I assumed that certain things were in place that maybe weren't. I love that as a leadership quote actually, because I think we make far too many assumptions as leaders. We got all the fancy sort of reports back from the audit, and we had that. But actually, the team came up with that big long list, and really the bottom one sums it up, doesn't it? That's what one of the teachers wrote about her TAs. I love my TAs. And we actually, that was from the TAs themselves who were working in the team, went through the audits, and that's what it told them. And that part of the auditing is sometimes missed, isn't it? That, well, so what? What's it telling us? What do we need to do? We learned from that audit that we needed to be better at questioning. We needed to develop independence more. We needed to be more consistent, because some teachers were saying, my teaching assistant always knows what's happening. Some teaching assistants were saying, I don't know what's happening because I haven't done it. So, but this was what mattered to them. So my view would be, and top tip, share that audit and let it make sure it's out of just our offices as the leaders within school. Top tip number 5. Once you've done all that, really know where you want to be. Because if we don't know where we want to be, we're not going to get there. And we wanted to be realistic, but we did want to aim high. I had a really strong vision of that seamlessness between teachers and TAs. I had a strong vision of independence. You can see how sometimes our children are not very independent, and will hook onto the thing that we feel safe talking about. And we needed our teaching assistants and teachers to develop independence. I wanted that sense of pre-teach, reteach, reactive, rapid intervention within the classroom, and we formed our vision around that. That might look totally different in your schools, but we wouldn't have got a real ownership of that vision had we not gone through that process of audit together, had it not been so high profile. So we came up really, we knew where we wanted it to be. We're only halfway on that journey. We've got some fantastic practice, but I've got some practice that's still not where it needs to be. We're still a school, we've got great practice in this area. We're still a school that's vulnerable to category because of our standards. But look at where it's really good and build on from there. And then everybody could begin to buy into that. I'll let you read that statement, but it sums up vision for me perfectly. And you might be sitting there thinking, why is she not telling me about how to use teaching assistants in the classroom? But actually, that's the key part of this project for me. Intensely and obsessively, it's that, what is it that you won't compromise on and move with it? Because from that, we did get a call to action. That was really key. And something that the team, when they were filming, because they filmed some of the team meetings that they had, Mike said to us, there's a real common language between your teaching assistants and teachers. They're all talking in the same way about deployment, skills development, and it came from having that strong vision. So just to have a break from me for another minute, I want you to write 2 things. You might just scribble them on your page somewhere. If this element of your work, so if teaching assistant use in your school was outstanding, what's the most important thing you would see happening and hear happening? Just before we got started, someone was saying about, oh, but we've got this agenda, we've got that, now we've got this. When the schools I worked with Outward, some people were saying, we can't do this whole thing. This is a big project. I could, I needed to, and I was also using it because I was involved in Outward. Some people said, well, let's trial it in that year group. Let's do something within a couple of year groups. That worked really well for them. But actually, if you wanted to simplify it and think, I can't do everything, what about making those 2 things happen that you've just come up with? That see it happening, what's the most important thing you would want to see or hear? Why can't they be then the areas that you really push forward as a school? If you can't do this whole package, because it's big, isn't it? It's a big thing, but maybe take one thing and do it really, really well. And that, I think, worked for quite a few schools who were on the project, whereas others did go for the whole thing. We're going to evaluate and review everything about our teaching systems. So I think there's different ways into this. If people are sitting panicking around, wow, this is a big thing to be doing. Maybe trial in year groups, maybe pick something like that, one thing that you're going to really push, or throw yourself in and do the lot, which is what sometimes as school leaders are like, isn't it? I think lots of us have got things linked to this, haven't we? Know your barriers to change beforehand and address them. Because if we leave these barriers, they're not going to go away. Sometimes the small barriers do, don't they? Because you get enough of the impetus and the positive things, you suddenly turn around and that barrier's kind of disappeared itself. But knowing the barriers beforehand can be really key. That's my top tip number 6. We did a fascinating piece of work, and if you're interested in this, if you've got a school, and I was lucky actually, Highbank wasn't like this at all. Lots of the schools we worked with on the project up in West Yorkshire had some of these, and these were important to them. We're probably number 3, and we're trying very hard not to be, but there's a great book called Why Work is Weird. It's fantastic. If you Google it, it comes up. And this is the toxic culture. And lots of us have little elements of this lots of the time. How about fit in or show off? Top dog syndrome. You sometimes have that in your teaching assistants or your teachers or your leaders. Some of those can really, really damage this project if you've got them. But then there's the other ones that lots of us have got. Time. Time is always a massive issue, but actually we can get around that. If we embrace it and say, right, we have got challenges because I'm maybe a small school, we don't have lots of money, my TAs only work part-time, I used to have that. They don't start until 5 minutes before the children are coming in because I can't afford any more than that. That's maybe not going to change. If the reality is you've got a deficit budget and you haven't got any more money, then actually maybe you can't add more money in. Sometimes you can, by changing something, have a little bit more resource for that. But ultimately you have to look and think, well, it's not going to work unless we find time. So where can we find that time? Assemblies. Does everybody need to come into assembly all of the time? Can you find different pockets of time? Have you got some break times where senior leaders can maybe get out in the playground and, don't mean all, but on that day, those teaching assistants and teachers have 20 minutes together for this. So there are ways, but if you can find the resource to have that extra bit of time, that's really key. And I'll come on to that. Time is a massive one, but talk about it. What is the barrier? Because usually you can find those movements of time. Quiet resistance, I think, in this whole aspect is probably the biggest one. My staff are so willing, my teaching assistants are actually quite skilled in lots of ways, but when you get busy, you slip back to what you know best. And quiet resistance also came up. Some teaching assistants, it's always worked for me, so I'll nod and I'll say yes, but actually I'll go and sit with such and such who needs me because I'm always there, and his mum will get upset with me if I don't go and sit with him. So you get a bit of quiet resistance, and that's probably the most damaging because you sometimes don't see it or recognise it. Whereas when you've got some of these ones and you've got the teaching assistant who just makes it hard for everyone to want to develop, they're easier sometimes to just get on top of. But know what your barriers are. And I know we're going to have a little bit of a chance afterwards for that. So I'm not going to ask you to stop at this point and think about that. But either within the programme, as you move forward on this, or with your teams, really my top tip is talk about them and get them out there. Because sometimes someone will say this is a barrier and you want to go, oh, don't be daft, you can do it then, or hit. And actually you have to stop yourself and you have to listen. And that's how I have to stop myself and listen quietly. So toxic culture is a good one, but that's a good text to use as well. Why work is weird. Lots of answers to that. Top tip number 7, plan, and do a bit more planning. Just in case you're not quite there. But plan in a way that works for you. We decided nothing we were going going to do was going to be set in stone and policy until we knew it worked. So our approach was plan it, pilot it, develop it, evaluate it and implement it, or go back to the beginning because it didn't work. But implementation was really, there was a sense of we can take a few risks then along the way, and if it didn't work, that's okay, because we'll try something different before we put it as policy. So that planning was really key. I put up the example of good communication. We talked about, we believed in those things. We believed that you have to be well informed, you have to have discussions if it's going to work. So if we believed that, we then planned that out. But you can have lots of fancy action plans, can't you, like that? And we've all got those with all the headings on. And there's probably some of that behind the scenes. But actually the action plan that the team did together was that an area for development, what's the implication for the whole school, what's the implication for teaching assistants, and what's the implication for teachers. So for communication, we then planned smart time. I love this. This came from foundation stage. They absolutely, without doubt, at the end of every day, for 10 minutes, sit down and do smart time. No one's allowed to be tidying up as they do it. They sit down and they talk about children in the day. And we loved that as a development team when they shared it with us. I didn't even know that. And that's bad, isn't it? Because I'm ahead and I didn't know that's what it was. And they shared that, and then the team decided, we want everyone to do that. And then they planned for it. And then teachers said, but we do a club on that day, so we can't do it then. So some smart times in the morning. Emails, we had the same. I couldn't believe that some staff weren't looking at emails. That was an eye-opener as well, all those emails I sent. But actually some of the TAs weren't looking at them. So what we did to counterbalance that, we also have what we call our green tray system. This was a TA who'd come from another school. She said, we did this, we had a tray, and every Monday morning the planning had to be in there. So lots of teachers email it, but the policy is that by the latest Monday morning, ready for your TA starting, whether that's 8 o'clock or 8:30, your planning will be in the green tray. And that green tray doesn't have anything else in. And sometimes if I'm doing a lesson observation and I go over and the green tray is full of stuff, I'll say afterwards, make sure your green tray is empty and it's just got your planning in. And that works because everybody knows it's my right to have that planning in that green tray, but the implication for the teaching assistant is you have to read it. And it was just so easy then. So we unpicked what good communication can look like. Planning was really key to that. You will probably never have a green tray in your school with planning in. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's but plan it out as a staff. Come up with the way that works for you, linked to your barriers. Our barrier was consistency. Some people got it, some people didn't. Whereas now it's so obvious. If that planning's not in the green tray, the TA says, oh, you haven't printed the planning off, and the teacher says, oh, I was busy, I'll do it now. Because that's usually what the barrier is, isn't it? So plan a plan, but maybe make the plan accessible to others. There's nothing fancy in that. And yes, we have got time scales behind it, but actually that was really clear for whoever wanted to see it. Meetings were important. We had clear agendas. And you can see we used the language, awaken possibilities, living vision. That was with the development team, so that was the teaching assistants and teachers and leaders. So plan it, but make it real. That's my top tip for making the team be able to take it forward. This is probably the biggest top tip. Top tip number 8, professional development. Professional development I'm really passionate about, which is why I was involved with the outward work, but make it good professional development. Professional development, yes, can be sat in meetings listening, like you are today, but actually the best quality professional development needs time invested in it. My teachers are heartbroken because we're in the second round of this. Teaching assistants are in teams of 3 and they go and observe each other. And then they have time afterwards to talk about what they've seen, and they do that 3 times. That's why the teachers are heartbroken, because they go, I haven't got my TA in the classroom. And we go back to, yes, but when they're there, they're going to be a far better TA because we're doing it. I could have said, well, okay, we're not going to be able to do that. They're not having time, we've got to find a way around. And actually, I had to be brutal with my teachers and say, I'm sorry, but our children, they're not so bad that you can't go with your class on your own for that 40 minutes on that particular day. And I had to be honest and upfront with them, because that's a reality actually. Teachers should absolutely be able to release their TAs. Yes, that intervention might not have happened that day, but because the teaching assistants are getting better and better, actually they do a much better job when they do the interventions. So investment in time of that, whatever that looks like, whether it's peer-to-peer observation, whether it's coming out for a meeting. Sometimes we have staff, a lot of the time we have staff meetings all together. That was always the model. But actually we do have some now for just teaching assistants, because we realise that whilst we think it's an open forum, most comments, and we made a particular effort to look at this, most sort of things contributed were coming from teachers in meetings. Whereas now, by doing some separate, the ones that we do together, it is much more of a partnership. So top tip, invest in professional development.
No, because that's a question. You've got professional development teachers there as well.
Yes.
Did you do explicit work with teachers about training on using the TAs?
We did, and one of the key areas for us, I see it really simply now, is there's 2 key strands for me on developing this. One is deployment, great deployment. One of them is skilled people. And I had a good talk to my SIG, who's an officer inspector, and I said, when did you see it at its best? He said, when you've got great deployment but poor skills, that does not good. When you have great skilled teaching assistants but poor deployment, that doesn't look great. But when you've got both, that's when it's really special in the classroom. So that led a lot of our work together, because actually teachers have to have the training and development on how best to use TAs. So we've done a lot of work, Jonathan, on rapid interventions, teach, reteach, and the teacher planning for that, and also how we would feed back and communicate. Because actually it is, as our colleagues said there, it's actually so much about teachers and the way the teachers deploy. But that's how I simplify this in my head now. Deployment and skills. I've got to take care of people's skills, and we've got to take care of deployment. So lots of work with teachers as well. Nearly there, everyone. I am nearly there. Classroom visits are one of the best things we did. The level of professional dialogue by going in and watching each other. And mutual appreciation was fantastic, because it affirmed lots of what they did, what they shared it. And we gave it real purpose. What's the most effective way to deploy? And we're going to keep repeating that process. So we can do it forward. Meatiest top tip is there's not one size fits all. Everything we do in our school is, there might be 10% of that could work in your school, and there's probably loads of things in your school that could work in mine, but things that wouldn't. And that's why this programme and this report for me was fantastic. It didn't say there was one size fits all. So what we actually did, we created our own deployment model, the Pi Bankway, the way that makes sense for our children who have got lots of language. And that is about reteach, pre-teach, rapid intervention, teachers and TAs, team teaching together, all of that there. We developed the training model of the triads, going into class, observing each other, the communication strategies, the smart time, the green trays. We devised that for us. We didn't know that's where we'd be. It was through the development team itself that we did. The interventions, we've only got certain very specific interventions that teachers plan for, and we came up with that model. I hate admitting this, up until this year, we didn't have, well, it was July when we started, we didn't do performance management for our teaching assistants. Not because we didn't want to, just because we hadn't got to it, because we were so busy. But that's been really transformational, having a system that worked and linking it to this work that we were doing. And this probably was the key thing for our teaching assistants. They, at the beginning, had heard this might be about people losing their jobs. Unions in Sheffield weren't happy about this project, and they thought it was about people losing their jobs. It actually led to more people having opportunities. So we created a structure where I've got 4 HLTAs, and I know some of you won't be in that type of position where you can afford that kind of thing. I do absolutely, we're very fortunate in the funding we have. But actually, this came out of what teaching assistants said, and they said we needed these key mentors in our phase, and the payoff is we don't have supply teachers in covering PPA. So it actually led to a structure that worked for us. So knowing your school and knowing there's not one size fits all is the key. And then the final top tip is that just keep going back and checking, because I have to keep checking those green trays and checking that they're there. But actually, because everyone knows they should be there, chilling. But keep monitoring and keep going back is that final top tip. And I'm sorry, it sounds like I've told you how to do this now. I'm not at all. They've literally offered in that way of, had I known all these things beforehand, I'd have started probably in a different way and quicker. But top tips, making the best use of your teaching assistants. So enjoy your journey for it, because it's hard work, but it's great. I do love it.
Are there any questions? We're going to try and leave about 15-20 minutes to wrap up some bits and bobs, but I thought, are there any questions for Mo about anything that's not been covered or things that relate to your kind of context?
Yes, it's fine. I think you will. Yeah.
Any questions? Anything? No. Thanks, Mo. That's really helpful.
I think Mo's just done a good way of knocking out all remaining excuses for doing something about it.
Yeah.
It is
Top 10,
really
11.
hard.
Go for it. Yeah.
We can always find the reasons not to do it. And I think as leaders, it is that brutal message of actually just acknowledge the barrier and break it down, because there's always a way. And I know that's easy for me to say because I have got this big funding pot. But actually, the schools I worked with on the Outlook project, some of them didn't, and some of them had amazing ways of actually sort of working with their teaching assistants. And they did change some hours, so they did leave earlier than they used to, but they did start earlier. And there was lots and lots of different ways that they worked as teams to do it.
Yeah, I think one thing that we showed this last time, I think one thing we found in projects is that you might need a little bit more money to make some of the changes, but the schools that we've always seen make this change have done that through time, attention, care and planning, rather than excess money. And this is what I think is quite unique about this issue really, is that, as we said last time, it's not so many things require more resource, more money to do things, but this is quite unusual that we've got this fast resource in the system, and it's a case of unlocking it in a way that requires care and attention, not lots and lots of more money. And that's one of the reasons that we've been so interested in it.